Picture this. You wake up in the morning and before your feet even touch the floor, your mind starts talking. A voice, your voice, says you're behind, you should have done more yesterday, you're wasting time, you're not enough. And before the day even begins, you're already trapped in the noise inside your head, trapped in a loop that feels like thinking, but is actually just mental self-sabotage in disguise. Here's the dark truth. You don't control your mind controls you. And the worst part, you think it's normal. You think that the constant chatter, the anxiety, the overthinking, the what-ifs are all you, but they're not. They're just habits of thought. Programs that have been running for years, shaping how you see yourself, others, and the world. Every time you try to fix your thoughts by thinking even more, you dig yourself deeper. That's the trap, the hidden one that psychology doesn't always explain clearly, because it's not just mental, it's existential. You've built your identity around your mind. You believe you are your thoughts, but you're not. You're the awareness behind them. And that awareness, the real you, has been hijacked. See, your brain is not designed to make you happy, it's designed to keep you safe. And safety to your primitive brain means control, predictability, certainty. So the moment something feels uncertain, rejection, loss, love, ambition, your mind floods you with fear and overthinking. It whispers, stay small, don't risk it, think more before you act. But thinking more doesn't lead to peace, it leads to paralysis. You start analysing conversations you already had, replaying moments that are long gone, trying to control the uncontrollable. That's not awareness, that's mental imprisonment. And the cruel irony? Your mind convinces you it's helping. It tells you that if you think hard enough, you'll find clarity, that if you plan every outcome, you'll be safe. But what actually happens is the opposite. You become disconnected from reality, from people, from presence. You stop living and start simulating life inside your head. This is the hidden trap. Your mind doesn't want peace. It wants control, and control is the illusion that keeps you suffering. Most people live their entire lives inside that illusion. They never question the voice narrating their every move. They never ask who's actually talking. Let me ask you something. When you're overthinking, who's doing the thinking? And who's the one noticing it? That tiny gap, that moment when you become aware of the thought instead of being lost inside it, that's where freedom begins. But freedom feels terrifying at first, because once you realize you're not your thoughts, you lose the only identity you've ever known. And that's why so many people cling to their pain. It feels familiar, it feels like them. Your ego would rather suffer in control than find peace in uncertainty, so it keeps you locked in cycles of rumination and guilt. It tells you stories like, you're not enough. You need to fix yourself. You'll be happy when... But happiness never comes, because it's always postponed to some imaginary future. This is not just anxiety, it's psychological conditioning. It's your survival brain hijacking your consciousness. And until you see the pattern, you'll keep mistaking your mind's noise for your truth. The truth is simpler, quieter, and infinitely more powerful. But to see it, you have to stop listening to the mind that keeps you trapped. Because the real power isn't in controlling your mind, it's in not being controlled by it. That's where we begin. Let's pull back the curtain. For most of your life, you've been taught that thinking is your superpower, that smart people think more, plan more, analyze more, that overthinking means you care. But here's the myth I'm about to shatter. Thinking doesn't always equal intelligence. Sometimes it's the purest form of fear. You use your mind like armor, believing that if you can predict every possible outcome, you'll be safe from pain. But prediction isn't protection. It's paralysis disguised as preparation. You think you're controlling life by thinking about it, but all you're really doing is standing still while life moves on without you. The myth of control. Your mind loves control because control feels like safety. It tells you, if I just think a little longer, I'll be ready. I'll start when I'm sure. I'll act when I feel confident. But here's the paradox. Confidence never comes first, action does. The people you admire, the ones who seem effortlessly calm, confident, and decisive, don't have quieter minds. They just stop believing every thought that passed through their heads. They learnt that the mind is like weather, constant, unpredictable, and impossible to stop. You don't fight the rain, you just stop standing in it without an umbrella. That's the key. You can't silence your mind. but you can stop obeying it. The internal addiction. Psychologists call it cognitive fusion. It means your thoughts and your sense of self are fused together. You believe whatever your mind says because it feels like you saying it. So when the voice says, "You're not good enough," it doesn't sound like an opinion. It sounds like truth. You don't question it. You submit to it. And that's how the mind controls you, through identification. But here's a brutal fact most people never realize. You're addicted to your thoughts. Your mind gives you the illusion of control, and you crave that illusion. It's comforting even when it's killing you. Like someone clinging to a burning house because it's familiar. You would rather stay where it's painful but known than walk into the unknown where peace might actually exist. That's how deep the addiction goes. Every time you replay an argument in your head, every time you imagine a scenario that never happens, every time you scroll through social media comparing yourself to others, you're feeding that addiction. You're giving your mind more data to chew on, more illusions to reinforce, and your brain rewards you for it. It releases little hits of dopamine for figuring things out, even when you're not actually solving anything. So you keep thinking and thinking and thinking until thought becomes a drug and violence feels unbearable. That's why people can't meditate for more than 2 minutes, because silence threatens their addiction to mental noise. The cost of obedience. But here's the dark side. Obedience to the mind has a cost. It drains your energy, kills your presence, and destroys your confidence. Think about it. Every moment spent lost in thought is a moment stolen from experience, from actually living. You don't feel the sun because you're thinking about your to-do list. You don't hear what people say because you're rehearsing your reply. You don't connect because you're trapped behind the bars of your own analysis. That's not intelligence. That's imprisonment. And the tragedy? You've been told it's normal. Society worships the busy mind, the grind, the constant self-improvement. But most of that is just distraction dressed up as progress. Because true evolution doesn't happen in the mind, it happens in awareness. And awareness doesn't think, it sees. You can't think your way to peace. You can only see through the illusion that thinking will bring it. That's what this video is really about. Seeing through the illusion of control, the illusion of me versus my mind. The illusion that overthinking means you're careful when really it means you're scared. And fear is not wisdom. But awareness is freedom. And once you taste that, you'll never want to go back. Let's go deeper. Because the real danger isn't that your mind overthinks, it's that it lies. Not out of malice, but out of fear. Your brain is wired for survival, not truth. It evolved to detect threats, not possibilities. To keep you alive, not fulfilled. That means your mind constantly scans for what could go wrong, not what could go right. You interpret silence as rejection, a delay as failure, a challenge as danger. Your mind paints worst-case scenarios because it believes fear will keep you safe. But fear doesn't protect you, it just prevents you from living fully. That's how people end up half alive, safe, but suffocating. The illusion of safety. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a cliff. Below is the unknown, the possibility of growth, love, expression, freedom. Behind you is the familiar, comfort, control, certainty. Your mind whispers, "Stay back, it's dangerous." But what's actually dangerous is staying stuck. You don't realize that the cage you're in isn't locked. You're just afraid to push the door open. That's the illusion of safety. It keeps you from realizing you're already free. Every time you obey your fears, you strengthen them. Every time you delay action because you're not ready, you tell your brain that fear equals safety, and your brain learns quickly, so it repeats the pattern again and again until fear becomes your identity. But what if fear wasn't the problem? What if fear was just the smoke, and thought was the fire beneath it? Your fear only exists because your thoughts feed it. Your mind tells a story about failure, about rejection, about what might happen, and you believe it. You don't question the story. You don't ask, is this real or just mental theatre? You just react, you retreat, you stay small. That's how the mind controls you, through stories. The story machine. Your mind is a storyteller, not a scientist. It doesn't care if its stories are true, only that they make sense. It wants coherence, not accuracy. That's why you can feel anxious even when nothing's wrong. Your mind fills in the blanks with fear just to complete the narrative. Someone doesn't text back. Your brain invents reasons. They're ignoring you. You said something wrong, they don't care. But none of those thoughts are facts. They're guesses dressed up as truth. Your mind stories are persuasive because they sound logical, but logic isn't always aligned with reality. It's aligned with your conditioning, and conditioning is just repetition. Old emotional wounds, cultural scripts, things your parents said, moments that hurt you when you were too young to understand why. Now those echoes live inside you as thoughts that feel like truth. You call it intuition, but it's just a learned pattern of fear. The mind tells stories to protect your ego, from pain, from uncertainty, from loss. But by protecting you, it isolates you. It builds walls so tall that nothing real can get in or out. That's why some of the smartest people are the most miserable. They can analyze everything except their own illusions. The observer's power. So what's the way out? It's not positive thinking, it's not motivation, it's observation. The moment you see the story your mind is telling without judging it, without fighting it, you create distance. That distance is power, because now you're no longer in the story, you're watching it unfold in you. You're no longer the anxious character trapped in the plot. You're the audience, quiet, aware, untouchable. That's where freedom begins, not by changing your thoughts, but by remembering they're just thoughts. They have no meaning until you give them one. They have no power until you obey them. So the next time your mind starts spinning stories, pause. Don't fight it, just observe. You'll notice something miraculous. When you stop fueling your thoughts with attention, they dissolve on their own. Because thoughts are like shadows, they can't survive under direct awareness. And when that awareness expands, the mind starts to quiet naturally. Not because you forced it, but because you finally stopped believing it. That's how you stop letting your mind control you. Not by war, but by understanding. And understanding changes everything. Now that you've seen through the illusion, let's talk about the transition. The messy, uncomfortable, beautiful processes of taking your power back. Because awareness isn't a one-time awakening. It's a daily practice. It's the art of remembering who's actually in control. The watcher, not the noise. But here's the catch. The mind doesn't give up control easily. When you stop obeying it, it panics. It fights back. It throws louder thoughts, stronger emotions, more self-doubt. That's not failure, failure. That's withdrawal. You're breaking a lifelong addiction, the addiction to mental control. And like any addiction, there's a detox. The detox of thought. When you start observing your mind instead of feeding it, the first thing you'll notice is chaos. Your brain will scream louder than ever. It'll tempt you back into thinking loops. You need to fix this. You need to figure it out. But that's just the system protecting itself. The old identity trying to survive. It's like fog before dawn, thickest right before the light breaks through. Don't run from that fog. Stand in it. Breathe. Watch it move without following it. You'll begin to feel something subtle but profound. Space. A pause between stimulus and reaction, between fear and obedience, and between thought and truth. That pause, that silence, is where your real life begins. The space between. In psychology, this is called meta-awareness. The ability to recognize your thoughts as events in the mind, not facts about reality. But on a deeper, almost spiritual level, it's the birth of self-mastery. Because once you realize that your thoughts are not commands, they lose their grip. They still appear, but you stop saluting every one of them. Imagine living life like that, free from the constant background noise of what if and I should have. Imagine walking into a room without rehearsing what to say, feeling emotions without needing to label or fix them, speaking from intuition, not fear. That's what happens when you reclaim the space between thoughts. It's like turning off a radio that's been blasting static your entire life. And suddenly you can hear again. You can see again, not through the fog of your mental commentary, but through raw, direct experience. You start noticing the world, not as a concept, but as it is. The texture of a sound, the pause in a conversation, the way sunlight hits a wall. Reality begins to feel deeper, sharper, truer. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to control your thoughts, you actually gain control over your life. Because control doesn't come from dominance, it comes from presence. You can't outthink anxiety, but you can outpresence it. You can't argue with your mind and win, but you can watch it, and it loses interest. The shift of identity. Most people try to improve their lives by upgrading their thoughts. But real transformation happens when you upgrade your identity. Stop seeing yourself as the thinker. Start seeing yourself as the observer. The thinker is never at peace because it lives in time. It's always replaying the past or worrying about the future. But the observer lives only now, and now is the only place peace exists. Every time you catch yourself spiraling into thought, use this as your anchor. I am not the voice in my head. I am the one who hears it. Say it to yourself. Whisper it if you have to. Let it echo. That's not a quote. It's a recalibration. You're training your nervous system to shift from reaction to awareness. And slowly, the old patterns begin to fall away. Because the mind cannot control what you no longer identify with. The emotional release. When you disobey your mind, emotions you've suppressed for years start surfacing. That's not regression, it's release. The anger, sadness, and fear that were buried under thought finally have space to breathe. Don't resist them. Let them move through. This is where most people turn back. They confuse healing with breaking. But this is what it feels like to wake up. Not blissful at first, but raw and real. You're feeling life directly, without the buffer of constant thought. And that's the point. To feel, to live, to be, not as a prisoner of your mind, but as the consciousness behind it. Because once you taste that freedom, you can never go back to being controlled. There's a moment, after the storm of thought begins to quiet, when you realize something radical. The silence you were running from was never empty. It was full of clarity, of calm, of truth. You were just too noisy to hear it. This is where most people finally glimpse what philosophers, monks, and psychologists have all tried to describe for centuries: the state of presence. The mind hates it because presence has no use for control, but your soul craves it because presence is freedom. When you're present, you stop living life as a rehearsal. You stop trying to think your way into being. You start being a fully now, and suddenly you see how much of your life has been lived unconsciously, not from choice, but from conditioning. You realize the arguments you replay in your head were never about the other person. They were about your need to be right. The goals you chase were never about purpose. They were about validation. Even your so-called self-improvement was just a more sophisticated form of control. You were polishing the bars of your mental prison. But now you start seeing through them. The psychology of freedom. In psychology, there's a concept called cognitive diffusion. It's when you stop fusing your identity with your thoughts and see them as separate passing events. Not facts, not orders, just weather. Think of your thoughts like clouds, some dark, some light, some moving fast, some slow. And you are the sky. No matter how many clouds appear, the sky itself is untouched. It doesn't panic when a storm rolls in. It simply allows. That's what awareness feels like. Peace, not because the storm ends, but because you realize you are never the storm. When you live from that awareness, your behavior changes naturally, without forcing it. You don't have to try to be confident. Confidence appears when the noise of self-doubt fades. You don't have to try to be mindful. Mindfulness happens when you're no longer lost in mental time travel. This is what ancient philosophy and modern psychology agree on. Freedom is not the absence of thought, it's the absence of identification with thought. You still think, you still plan, you still feel fear, but you don't become it. You move with it, like water around a stone. The power of stillness. You might be wondering, if I stop letting my mind control me, will I lose my drive? Won't I become passive? No. You'll become precise, because when your mind isn't cluttered with noise, your actions come from clarity, not compulsion. You no longer chase things out of fear of missing out. You move because it feels aligned. You stop reacting and start responding, and responses are powerful. They come from awareness, not panic. This is the shift that separates emotional chaos from inner mastery. Stillness doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right thing, without resistance. It's the calm confidence you see in people who don't need to prove anything. They walk into rooms and don't perform. They speak slowly, listen deeply, and act deliberately because they're not operating from noise. They're anchored in awareness. That's true presence, and people can feel it even before you speak. It's not charisma, it's consciousness. The final trap, spiritual ego. But beware, even awakening can become another trap. The mind can hijack awareness itself and turn it into identity. I'm more conscious than others. I've transcended thought. I've figured it out. That's the ego in disguise, subtle, sophisticated, and spiritual looking. Because the moment you think you've arrived, the mind has tricked you again. Awareness has no identity, no pride, no need to compare or prove. It simply is. And that's the ultimate surrender, when you no longer need to control even your awakening. When you stop turning consciousness into another competition, that's when the mind finally bows, not in defeat, but in recognition. It realizes it was never the master, only the servant. And once it serves awareness instead of fighting it, everything aligns, your emotions regulate, your relationships deepen, your creativity flows. Because you're no longer filtering life through fear and control, you've returned to the simplicity of being. The return to self. So here's the real secret, the one no one tells you. You were never meant to control your mind. You were meant to understand it and then rise above it. Your thoughts are tools, your emotions are signals, but you, the awareness behind them, are infinite. And when you live from that truth, you stop chasing life and start experiencing it. You laugh easier, you love deeper. You make decisions without regret because you're not acting from fear. You stop being controlled by your past because you see that the past only exists in thought. You finally come home, not to an idea of peace, but to the direct experience of it. The silence you once feared becomes your foundation. The mind you once obeyed becomes your ally. And life, in all its chaos, beauty, and unpredictability, stops feeling like something to control and starts feeling like something to dance with. So stop letting your mind control you. Watch it, understand it, and then let it go. Because the truth is simple. You are not your thoughts. You are the space they move through, and in that space you are untouchable.